How are you? How are you? Thinking aloud. Thinking aloud, and I've got an article. And part of what I try to do is I have an unhealthy almost, in fact, I love it. It's part of the game for me. But I have an unhealthy fascination on how to be the reset, financial reset, prepped man. And I think about all the key games and aspects that the control structure will play, all the things that we have going for us and all the things we don't, and how will they neutralize the key things that we can hold on to as in a global slave nation. They slowly tighten and ratchet that hand around our collective throats. Where can we run? How do we hide? So that we maintain our liberty and freedom from an oppressive control structure that seeks to dominate, usury extract, and tax extract, and create a small sliver of supposed superiors that live off the back of the worker ants, which they see us as. One of the key holdings that we have is if you've made decent money, you buy yourself a nice chunk of land, a private piece of property, you become self-reliant, you capture your own water in rain harvesters, you capture solar beams in panels, you charge your own batteries, you have backup power, you make yourself utility independent. You compost your own food, you can go to town with that, you can be super green, and you can become entirely self-reliant from food chain, aka their supermarket nature food with its processed, stay fresh for longer, nuked states, their vitamin deprived states, their commercial field rotation farming where the zinc and all the minerals have been sucked out of the soil. You can actually enrich your own little soil and be self-reliant. It's one of the most powerful things. How do they spoil that for us? And the big game that I've been waiting for the control structure to move on. So we've had Nestle. Nestle came out, Bilderberg member and CEO of Nestle. Forgive me now, I don't have the name to hand. This is all from memory. You do not own the rain that falls on your property. The beginning of telling you that you don't own the rain that falls on your property is the beginning of explaining that he owns it. And his corporation is heavily involved in water, and they will look to take away the planetary God-given gifts to the point where you'd remove all people's rights, and you maybe afford some of them back as privileges subject to behavior, tax payments, etc., etc. So the notion that a mega corp CEO is talking to citizens, not even of his own Swiss country, and informing them that which falls on your property is not even yours, of a natural environment, is an absolute scandal. So we have focused little what they describe as outriders, what I describe as outriders, they'll describe as controversial thought leaders for a better society and world. And this is kind of what I call a worldwide communism habit. The big game is actually bringing in a technological driven communism. That is what I've done. I've done podcasts on we're all communists now, etc., etc. When you've seen how banks have been bailed out, etc., etc. All of these things, we all carry the cost of these aspects. Now, the big gift that is still ours and legacy ours, and the way that I've always thought that this would be attacked is private property rights. You can be distinct and independent amongst a group of peers that have all got plots of land and are asserting their private property rights, collecting your rain, looking after yourself, all those things I've already mentioned and going into them. So I've been waiting on tenterhooks to see how and when they will attack in bringing us all to a government owns everything, non-libertarian control structure of all assets. How are they going to attack and affect you and I with the concept of private property rights? And without further ado, It's time to bring in some thought leaders from Harvard, Yale, and Microsoft, real friends of the citizen. Let's see how we do on that. I'm going to look to minimize this camera. There we go. Pop down into the bottom left corner and keep him small. This economist wants to abolish private property rights using blockchain. So note also that I mentioned this global communism that I suspect that is coming for us all. And the attack on property rights that is coming on for us all is woven into blockchain and the technological capabilities associated. So this is also why I've referred before that we're going to be facing a technologically based communism, along with all that you say being recorded, captured, filtered, searched through for words, etc., etc. In fact, I was just watching many years ago old movie, the Seven Deadly Sins, which my partner hadn't seen, and one of the leads that Morgan Freeman gets is he goes to an FBI contact where they're actually keeping a schedule of all people that go to the public library and order certain books within certain titles, and how they were harvesting those names and had a list. And that is the sole reason why Brad Pitt and Morgan Freeman ended outside the door of this evil Seven Sins anti-hero. Anyway, I digress, but that shows even in the Hollywood movies, you get clues of how they're doing. It's a signaling system of how it worked and how it got used for a good cause. Meanwhile, it's actually been happened to track you on a far bigger case. You've heard about the Samsungs always recording your voice, etc. It's not just them, not that brand only, you know about the phones, etc., etc. Anyway, so the technological communism, the characters and actors that are going to be associated with this line of thought that I'm going to introduce you to, you should tag as part of the control structure system. And their names are Weyl, Vitalik Buterin, aka Ethereum, Vitalik Buterin, big love fest in with this line of thinking. He is part of the control structure. Sorry, chaps. He wants and loves this idea of private property abolishment, the thing that gives you your last remaining point of refuge, something of your own where you can dictate your own small kingdom, what you do soil-wise and invest, something that makes your perfect home is ownership. So anyway, let's go through this article and I'll post the link in the clip. Anyway, Weyl's big spiel, he suddenly ended up talking with Buterin on Twitter and 20-page comments and becoming big buds and meeting all of this. Also, blockchain has been mooted for property in many, many readings. So there's places, the land reg, where everything is kept, who owns what, all of this, all going to be accelerated into the blockchain. Watch, it's coming. Watch, it is coming. And that will be all very awesome when you buy and you do conveyancing, and lawyers' time will be reduced and hopefully some cost, because we don't have to see lawyers being paid more than they're worth either. But the dark side of this is exactly what's being proposed here. Now, the one thing that I've always thought that they will go for when it comes to making property ownership harder and harder is it's when you're a mobile nomad, they can't pin you down. They're always trying to establish your residency. So the tax extractors, the control structures, all want you to be penned and tagged like one of these feral cats that have it's something wedged in their ear with a microchip, etc., so that they know who you are, where you are, etc., that you've had your shots or not. You are like animals that are being chipped. Essentially, they want to pin you down to a certain status, a certain residency. You are born a human, not a person. Go investigate the legal language that surrounds being a person, where you are a subject of and a nation state, and have a look at the broader concept of a human. If a policeman ever comes to your door and says, "Are you the person, John Doe?" the answer is no, even if your name happens to be John Doe. I am the human being who travels by the name of John Doe. Anyway, separate discussion. Other people cover this topic really well. But anyway, I'm digressing. So here we go. They want to tag you. And so when you're fluid and nomadic, it's far harder for their extraction schemes to be able to nail you down, and you can arbitrage legal systems around different things. However, you don't have that point of refuge. And obviously, when you have kids and there's schooling, short of doing homeschooling and heavy commitments, you then get tied down. Now, the way that the property is good for you in one way, in that it is your fiefdom and kingdom to serve as you see fit, and it is safety, and you're a law unto your own in that space, providing you're not doing anything overtly criminal, beating up your wife, growing some form of drugs, plant crop that is illegal. You're going to be largely left alone. The protection that property gives you also is what ties you down. How are they going to attack us? I've always felt that it's going to be at a tax and manner. In other words, once they've got you, let's remember, these guys don't get enough tax for what they spent. They're hopelessly overspent, and there is no feasible way. How do they prolong the game? They have to extend and increase taxes. There is very few places where actual tax increases drop. And even on income tax, when politicians make a lot of it, it's often after they've destroyed the value of money, and the cost of living has been going up disproportionately higher than income and wages, etc., and new taxes are created. The biggest and greatest lie ever created in the world is temporary tax. Every VAT has come in and onward escalated to between 20%, some are even 25%. Can you believe that? Just on value-added tax. So these extraction mechanisms are ways that will make it harder and harder for people to own private property. So once you own a property, they're going to squeeze your nuts financially on the basis that all these services cost more and staying there. And I'm not just talking about that point where you purchase in, aka the entrance fee, which has gone through the roof. If you buy a £7 million property in the UK now, you'll pay $1 million in property taxes just to buy on board. That's just a transfer to the government with their new percentages on those levels. I respect that not everybody's buying a £7 million property, but in these marginal rates, when I first arrived, they were 1%, then they were 1 and 3, then they were 1, 3 and 5 on bands. Now they're 1, 3, 5 and super bands, and they've just turned into it. And the property prices have escalated so far that very few people pay 1% unless you're in a blighted area, and even the blighted areas in London are too expensive for that. Anyway, so tax and money is how they're going to squeeze you. These characters in their thought process at one of these typical universities, the likes that give us Paul Krugman and other outriders for quantitative easing and all other policies that government wants to make cool and have academic outriders support what they want to do and make arguments and written and thought documents and pieces like this. You also want to consider that Wired magazine is hosting this and giving oxygen to this policy. So essentially what he's doing, abolishing private property. This is what his solution is, abolishing private property. Forget this doing away with the one person, one vote. It's a total discussion in of itself later in terms of the democracy system that he's posing. But see where it is. So University of Chicago, so Chicago, New York, Harvard, Yale, all these outriders come out of here. Eric Posner was working with this Mr. Weyl character, Weyl, whatever the case may be. And what I want you also to do is to see how they frame their article and observe. It says, like, innumerable recent political essays, radical markets was partly conceived as a reaction to the political upsets of 2016. Quote, when Brexit happened, I realized that we really needed hope in order to avoid this wave of populism. Note, we need hope. This is a really negative event. AKA the UK voting for self-determination and saying we managed for all the years since the beginning of time immoral to run our own country. And it's only in the last recent realm that supposedly we can't exist and look after ourselves and we need this EU state to tell us what laws to have. This is a problem that needs to be solved. In other words, a democracy and an opinion voiced through a democracy that is all about self-determination is actually a problem that needs a solution and must be solved so that it never happens again. This is their thinking. Look at the framing. When Brexit happened, I realized that we really needed hope in order to avoid this wave of populism, that we needed to have a different idea on how to solve inequality. So this is being framed as a bunch of poor trolls that all voted for populism because they feel unequal. In other words, all Brexit voters are low intellect, fad tracers, trend, voting for a populist concept that has no logical reason on the basis that there's an unequal society, and he's going to give you the solution how to make it equal. So this is what's decided to make him. And then Trump made it even more important. Another major stuff up. People voted for somebody they shouldn't have, when they should have voted for a female criminal. So Posner and Weyl's post-mortem subverts a widespread of reading. Okay, you can read this article for yourself. But what is the key crux is this property. If racists threw all their votes at racist measures, note how this comment all comes out in the same article as a Brexit and a vote for Trump. In other words, the implication by association is anybody who voted for self-determination is a racist and an anti-immigrant, and anybody who voted for Trump is also inherently a racist and an anti-immigrant. That these guys are here to solve this so it never happens again. Now, the problem you have to observe here is that this guy has been a Microsoft thought employee. You must remember Microsoft's role in the elimination of the biggest notes in India, and the war on cash and the vaccines and all other aspects. So Microsoft, following Gates having stood down as an active tech company, has now become this larger control structure of data harvesting, whether you're running Skype, running Windows, etc., backdoors for government, all of this. Basically, it is the Satan we always thought it was. It's just no longer probably the highest, most current chosen one. Google's stolen that throne from them. But it's very much part and parcel. And their owners all have these amazing foundations with altruistic reasons that just happen to afford them an incredibly low tax existence as well, for which you can donate money to as well. So the 20-page comment by Vitalik Buterin, and this is something I want people to realize, the super geek who's the coolness, he's available, he's on Twitter and all of that, the coolness of the Ethereum platform and the big thinking, and the boy genius learned Chinese within 3 months at the age of God knows, before he'd even wiped his own backside, etc., etc. So it goes on. We all have to love as our super geek hero, and he's bound to know better than you. You see, all of this is about telling there are smarter people and they know better than you, and they are thought leaders, and you should be going along with this, because if you don't, you are showing you are ignorant and stupider than them. And you are resisting a more equal society, and you're a racist as well, probably. So the 20-page long comment wasn't that Vitalik gave on this blockchain use for removing private property rights, aka those of you who are homeowners, that would cease to be yours. You will be made into a forced seller on the basis of extraction, tax extraction to an ever higher degree, ever escalating, a ratchet that will conveniently provide a lot of income for control structures that are very, very short of income. But supposedly this whole argument is being framed as an equalizing of an unequal society. It will make it harder for the rich to have too much property. That's how it's being done. When you know the people that will be squeezed, that will be shaken out your homes, you will become tenants in your own home under these people. And what's to say they don't ratchet up the rents once you own nothing? They want to control all assets. This is their game, and Buterin loves it. He loves it. His new best buds with 33-year-old Weyl, the Microsoft worker. And this is what they want to do. Principle laid out. And it's called radical markets. People have lost faith in markets. We should allow markets to decide. What is the game that they're going to do to force you out of your home? You are going to have to declare annually as an audit the value of your property. If you understate it so that you do not pay a higher tax band, you are obliged, should anybody offer that value on that property, to sell it at that price to that person. Guess who might be regularly the bidder on your undervalued assessment on the valuation of your property, for which you are contractually obliged to agree sale? In other words, you either declare a high value and volunteer yourself for an astronomical tax, ever escalating, ever squeezing higher until you're forced to lie because you can't afford to live in your own home, even if you bought it outright from the very beginning. This is how they're going to turn you out of your property. And if you're a farmer with a huge amount of land, this is how that farm becomes government land and you become a tenant as a rental farmer on somebody else's ground. This is their big, big game. Read it and recognize who the actors are. Recognize the danger on one of the core strengths a libertarian has that is static and not nomadic: the right to have his own kingdom and to determine whether he can prepare food there, grow food there, collect water there, feed his family, provide shelter for his family, and be independent of control structure interference. This just makes me absolutely insanely mad, and you should read about the obligation, the abolition of private property. You see it here in your own words, with Buterin's backing holding great sway. You see, it will not be a government policy. It's meant to look like this is a seeded idea from bright people that work for Microsoft and are professors at university and write books called Radical Markets, Posner and Weyl. We'll have a look at these actors in a second about what's the ownership tax. He tweeted about Weyl's ownership tax. Vitalik Buterin wants you taxed out of your private property. This is a fact. He is supportive and wants you taxed to the extent that you are out of your own private property. Even if you don't have a mortgage to pay, they will ratchet up those expenses. And if you do not declare the full perceived property value, you will be obliged, and any person can take that property off you at the price you do declare annually. All done on blockchain for your technological communism, for outing independent people from their safe holds, aka your privately owned home. Wow. So let's have a look who these guys are. This is a Weyl, a self-declared Zionist, it even says here. Well, fancy that. Isn't it handy when people own up to exactly who they are? Eric Posner, self-declared Zionist. They are in here. Where is it? He's visiting Yale, senior researcher, 33-year-old, curly hair. Look at him now. What a sweet boy. Assistant professor at the University of Chicago. Collective Decision Engines is his company that he set up with a number of people, that is to pursue and encourage the development of these thoughts that he has regarding about blockchain auctioning in proprietarian, all in the name of an emancipatory egalitarian force, throwing you out of your privately owned property, providing the government with extra normal tax extraction until such point as you break and cannot afford it anymore, and then calling it emancipation, the equalizing of an unjust society, aka no citizens can afford to hold it, unless, of course, you're an absolute billionaire elite, part of the corporatocracy, and you establish the likes of Microsoft, Google, Amazon, in which case you will be one of the beneficiaries of that extraction because you are part of the control structure. And the peasants, the masses, will be paying for your bailouts as a banker next time your bank goes bust, or saying that Amazon as a retailer is too big to fail one day when they themselves put themselves in such a predicament. So yeah, here's one of the guys. Go and have a look. I'm going to put this guy in the link in the article. Recognize who your enemy is. Expect to hear from them more because they are serving the control structure. Glenn Weyll's agonizing journey to boycott the country he loves. Here we go. Described himself as a lifelong Zionist, came out for boycott of Israel. Oh, he's trying to be controversial. Well done. A little bit too little, too late for that regime, and create space inside Maine. Yeah. So there you go. The self-confessed Zionist. I wonder how useful this guy might be for the control structure. Let's have a look at Posner, who also wrote the book with him. Let's see if there's anything he has in common with Weyl, for example. Okay, so here we go. Posner, the internet currency. This is an article he wrote. Posner himself is written a number of things, and this article, Bitcoin is a Ponzi scheme. The internet's favorite currency will collapse. That's Eric Posner for you. That's how he stands on crypto and the potential decentralization and the liberty it might bring. He's also done work. Let's just see, is it on the wiki page? No, that's the other curly head schmuck. Where are we going? He's in, I think I need the Wikipedia. I think I've lost the browser here, guys. Forgive me for being a little bit all over the place. Posner is all for the NSA's extraction of your details. You deserve it, he says. By doing trade where you've given your information, you should accept that which goes with it. Here he is, Chicago Law School. This is Posner, American Law University. He's a lawyer of international contract law, He's the son of 7th Circuit retired Judge Richard Posner, deeply in the legal system. Kirkland Ellis, etc., etc. Go have a look at him. The trial of, here is his views. Posner responded to concerns about expanded national security programs at vacuum. Those who oppose the surveillance claim that the collecting and storing of unlimited metadata is a highly invasive form of surveillance of citizen communication. Posner's claimed that America can obtain the services they want by disclosing private information to strangers, such as the marketing services of doctors, have no grievance. If you give your information to doctors, insurance companies, internet service providers, the government is entitled to use it against you. This is what he claims. Even though you might have a one-to-one relationship and need to give them information to insure you at an insurance company, and it should be kept confidential between you and him, he's saying just by the fact that you gave it to them, government's entitled to it as well, and surveillance is cool and it should be done. So this is a pro-system. He is also a Zionist, I'm afraid. You'll see it all over this particular link, and he is the co-author of this book. Go and have a look at the wiki page and the general views of him. Oh, by the way, did I forget to mention Posner and Jamil Jaffer, the fellow at the Open Society Foundations. Have a look at what the Open Society is, an international grant-making network funded by the business magnate George Soros. Heard of the Open Society? You will soon. So here you have someone who appears in an academic context in Chicago, a thought leader thinking radical things and making a better world for you, funded by George Soros, a fellow of the Open Society. What government steals for you as your data without your permission and in surveillance data is all cool because you decided once to give it to one party you really needed to secure their services. These are the guys you are dealing with that are coming with it, and they're coming for your private property, and it's about tax extraction. They're going to squeeze you out of your private property. You need to know your enemy. You need to confront Vitalik Buterin, who is giving the technology away and approves of making it extortionately expensive, putting you in a position where you will be every year in a situation where you could be bought out of your own home if you don't price it to the rafters to discourage buyers. This is the system Vitalik of Ethereum wants. These are his friends. This is who he is communicating with. This is who he's meeting up with after giving 20 pages of prose and having like-minded conversations. They want you out of private property. You must become tenants as state-owned property. You must accept the technological communism that is coming your goddamn way because you're wiser, smarter elites are telling you that's how it's going to be. You're just a racist who resists change. Wise up, shut up, act now, or you're going to be thrown out your own homes by the government who will make it impossible for you to retain existence. Ignore this warning. This is how they're coming for you. I'm Francis. If you want to learn further about how to defend, you want to keep an eye on these dark actors who are coming for you in every single way and want to steal your liberty, then you really, truly need to wake up. How to play defense, our webinar, if you're a crypto trader, only for certain people. It doesn't suit everyone. July the 3rd, you can find out more and you can become part of our community where not only will we be advancing and building our wealth through crypto, we'll be defending our wealth and pushing back against the control structures and positioning so that these guys get unclothed, unmasked, and that their agendas and the real money behind them that funds them can be blocked and recognized. Vitalik is not your friend. Posner is not your friend, and Weyl, whatever his name with his curly locks and blue eyes and self-confessed Zionist, is not your friend. They are pushing an agenda from their master puppeteers. Recognize it early, act now. Bye.